Murder and assassination in America. This terror attack that took place in a train in Charlotte, North Carolina, was not reported by the press for 2 weeks. Happened on 22nd of August, and no media coverage whatsoever until Donald Trump broke the news, basically, and then Charlie Kirk, and forced the rest of the media to pay attention to this savage attack in a train by somebody unprovoked, unwarned, from behind, stabbed this woman 3 times in the neck. And Iryna Zarutska, a Ukrainian refugee who fled in 2022 from the war in Ukraine, hoping for peace and safety in America. How much safer could she have been? She's in a train in public in Charlotte, North Carolina. I mean, about as safe a place as you could imagine to be. Stabbed from behind several times, including in the throat. Apparently, the people who watched the video, and I've watched it, and it's traumatic, but I didn't see 3 strikes, but the people who've analyzed the original footage say he stabbed her 3 times. And, you know, if you've ever been stabbed, the amazing thing is you don't feel it at first. There's no pain immediately. It's like if you've ever come off your bicycle and you've grazed on the ground. There's initial shock and you don't feel the pain immediately. You don't always know what's happened. And I haven't been shot, well, I've been shot at, but people who've been shot have said, you know, at first it's like, you know, they wonder, why did I just fall down? They try to get up, but their leg is wobbling under them. You don't always feel the pain. So here you can see immediately afterwards, she's looking up in shock. What happened? You don't know when something traumatic has happened. When you're hit by a bullet or by a knife, there's this initial numbness. And David Livingston reported this when he was grabbed by a lion and shaken around. He said, as a dog shakes a rat. He said he felt no pain. He says, this must be a mercy of God that the impala, when they've been caught by the lion, don't feel pain immediately. Of course, it would come later, but you can just see there's shock, but there's no understanding of what's happened yet. Interestingly, a picture on her Facebook page had a Black Lives Matter poster on the wall. And interesting, Iryna would have been safer on the streets of war-torn Ukraine than on the Charlotte light rail under Democrat leadership. Because, I mean, just look at this. How many disinterested humans standing around, sitting around, not doing a thing while she's bleeding out. And this thug who had stabbed her walks away, and you can actually hear on the video, I got that white girl, and he said it twice. And as he's leaving the train, still carrying the knife, dripping with blood all over the floor, you can just see on the floor, even there, drops of blood. He's still carrying the knife, blood splattered all the way along there. And this DeCarlos Brown Jr. was a career criminal, released onto the streets despite 14 prior convictions. But Charlotte has got this kind of graffiti. Charlotte, North Carolina has had I hate whites, and they've had social media posts like this. He's going down, extermination for all you cockroaches coming up soon, love it when you cry. Smash the white man march. They've had these marches in Charlotte, South Carolina. So this man had obviously been whipped up in this hysterical, racist atmosphere. Kill whitey. This is the kind of graffiti they've had on their monument. Remember, they've torn down many monuments of Confederate heroes like Robert E. Lee in Charlotte. And there's been a game in America for a long time, the knockout game. And you might have seen some videos where some thug will come and will hit somebody from behind. It can be a grandmother, it can be a young child, as long as the person's white. You knock them out. And there are videos of this, because of closed-circuit TV camera, the knockout game. You just come up from behind and you knock someone out. And there have been people who've died, fallen so badly on the concrete or by a lamppost that they've been knocked dead. But the knockout game's part of it. Now, the narrative is whites are racists and all black people are innocent victims, and whites are killing black people all the time. But here's the statistics in America. And that is, blacks killed by whites only make up 2%. Blacks killed by police make up 1%. Whites killed by police, 3%. In fact, police have said they'll much sooner shoot at a white criminal than a black criminal, because if they shoot at a black criminal, they might end up having their lives destroyed and end up in prison. And whites killed by whites, 16%. Whites killed by blacks, 81%. Blacks killed by blacks, 97%. So statistically, this narrative that whites are disproportionately attacking black people is fiction. If anything, Booker T. Washington puts it well, there's a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardship of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they've grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. It is a racket. It's an absolute racket, and there's a bunch of these characters out there making a mint out of it. Do you know the word racist did not exist in the Old English dictionaries? You'd have to go to the 1920s to find the word first appeared. It's a word made up by Leon Trotsky, the mass murderer of the Soviet Union, the leader of the Red Army. Leon Trotsky made up the word racist. Anyone who opposed communism is a racist, an anti-Semitic racist, because most of the Bolsheviks were Jews, of course atheistic Jews, mind you, but still, and you know, like Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin and all that, and Leon Trotsky, who was Leon Bronstein, was Trotsky's actual name, and they decided to use the word racist, which I think is usefully understood by this acrostic, rather annoying communist-inspired sounding tactic. The most racist people are the ones crying racist all the time. Like, who are the worst racists we've ever seen in our country and continent? Well, Julius Malema, Robert Mugabe. The very people screaming racist all the time are the worst racists of all. And if you swap the races of everyone in this picture, Charlotte would be burned to the ground today. I mean, imagine if some white criminal thug had stabbed some poor innocent black woman in the neck from behind, and if the people sitting by doing nothing were white, what would the media have done? But Iryna Zarutska was too pale, and that's her crime. And it's absolutely terrible. Her hat's on the seat, and she's just curled up into a bundle, fallen on the ground, and the blood pouring everywhere. By the way, I saw somebody saying this is a fake news thing because there's no blood. Well, you can't see the blood initially. It takes a while after being stabbed for the blood to come out. So those initial pictures we showed, there's no blood. But this is the reality of what was there later when they found her. Now, this is what Donald Trump posted, and he blew the story open because this story was not getting any media coverage in America. It didn't fit the narrative. I've seen a horrific video of a beautiful young Ukrainian refugee who came to America to escape the vicious war in Ukraine and was innocently riding the metro in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she was brutally ambushed by a mentally deranged lunatic. The perpetrator was a well-known career criminal who has previously been arrested and released on cashless bail in January latest, a total of 14 times. What the hell was he doing riding the train and walking the streets? Criminals like this need to be locked up. And then you had some imbeciles in Congress saying it is not the job of the police to prevent crime, only to investigate afterwards. And that you can't lock people up in prison to prevent crime. But that's the whole purpose of prisons, is to lock people up to prevent crime. And this DeCarlos Brown Jr., career criminal, released in the streets despite 14 prior convictions. By the way, when you see tattoos, you know the person has a demon. I've dealt with deliverance ministry people, and they said, there's no such thing as a tattooed person who doesn't have demons. Demons come free with every tattoo. And actually, it's like blood sacrifice, carving into your skin and putting all this toxic stuff in there. Everybody who's got lots of tattoos is demon possessed. And if they've even got a little tattoo, they are demon oppressed at the least. They need some deliverance. But I mean, a person like this should not walk the streets. He's got a GoFundMe project to raise funds to stop the injustice against poor DeCarlos Brown Jr. It's been taken down now, but he had 5,000 raised because this poor guy was a victim of racism, obviously, because he's being locked up. It couldn't be that he did anything criminal, of course. Iryna's family described as a gifted and passionate artist with a deep love for animals. You know, as somebody who doesn't like animals, I wouldn't trust. But someone who loves animals, obviously there's good things to say about them. She graduated college in Kiev. She was working at a pizza shop in America to earn enough money. She wanted to study to be a veterinary assistant. Her dream was to be a veterinary assistant. So obviously an unselfish person who wanted to serve. Now, you're kind of wondering, 5 bystanders doing nothing? I mean, that's disturbing. Every Democrat in America has supported Ukraine all over. Support Ukraine, support Ukraine. Send them bombs, send them billions. But no, not this Ukraine. This Ukrainian doesn't matter. And the magistrate judge, Teresa Stokes, is a DEI judge who released without bail this 15-time felon who then murdered Iryna Zarutska on the train in Charlotte, North Carolina. She should be reprimanded. She should actually be removed from the bench. It is disgusting. What kind of judge releases criminals like that? And not even with any cash bail. So, in fact, there's a scripture that says that to condemn the innocent or to release the guilty, judges will be cursed. And that's what she did. The Daily Mail reports that Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes was presented with Brown's case as recently as the 21st of January this year. She knew he was delusional and dangerous, yet she gave him cashless bail with just a written promise to return to court. No treatment for mental illness, no confinement, no protection for the public. I mean, this is a failure of justice. So this woman is dead because this man was arrested so many times, and each time the criminal justice system let her go. A DEI prosecutor, district attorney, and DEI judge, and DEI mayor who doesn't care. And by the way, you know what DEI stands for? Democrats employing idiots. Ecclesiastes 8 verse 11 says, why does crime increase? Because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. The hearts of the children of men are fully set to the evil. Why does crime increase? Because criminals are not punished quickly enough. And so Iryna Zarutska is her service is going to be held. No, it's already been held. And the media completely missed it. They wouldn't have even covered this if it wasn't that President Trump and Charlie Kirk brought the subject to everyone's attention. Now, you can't walk around wearing full armor, but it seems if somebody's going to stab you from behind in a bus or a train, what can you do? Obviously, we've got to practice situational awareness, but are you meant to now wear full armor? You'd look a little silly in public if you did that. But that's the only thing that could have saved her, is wearing full armor like this. Now there are some wall murals being put up, and apparently Elon Musk had said he will fund artists who will do wall murals for her. Because you might recall that for George Floyd, who was a career criminal who killed himself with a drug overdose while he was being arrested for counterfeit money laundering with shop, he had wall murals everywhere. Towns were burning, shopping centers were burning, riots on the streets, names, paintings even on the streets and so on. And the whole BLM, burn, loot, murder crowd went berserk then. So Elon Musk says, well, let's get some of her pictures up on wall murals all over America. But our concern has to be justice. 1 Peter 2 makes it clear that authorities have been instituted amongst men, sent by God to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. That is the only purpose of government. Government is there to protect its citizens. If government cannot protect its citizens, it's got no right to be there, and it's got no right to our taxes. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. For he is God's servant to do you good. That is what God says government exists for. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword for nothing. Although it does seem in some places they do bear the sword for nothing. It's not to punish criminals, it's only to punish decent people, law-abiding people. He is God's servant. And by the way, the word in Greek is deacon. The government is to be God's deacon. an agent of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. I think that's going to happen on this occasion because Donald Trump said this was performed on a federally funded transportation system. This is a federal crime, and the Department of Justice is going to prosecute and push for the maximum penalty, which in this case would be the death penalty. Now, some Christians argue that the death penalty is not right. But for those who hold the word of God as authoritative, capital punishment is not a matter of choice. It's not a matter of an opinion poll. It's not even a matter of court or parliamentary decree. Capital punishment for murder is God's command. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made man. Genesis 9 verse 6. Immediately after the flood, a universal decree, death penalty is installed. God instituted capital punishment long before the enactment of the Mosaic law. Long before Moses, death penalty for murder was already enacted, immediately under Noah. In fact, capital punishment was declared not only for Noah's time, but for all generations to come. And in Exodus 21 we read, anyone who strikes a man and kills him shall surely be put to death. If a man schemes and kills another man deliberately, take him away from my altar, put him to death. Anyone who kidnaps must also be put to death. Now, you could run to the altar and hold on to horns of the altar and receive mercy, and you'd be left alone. In fact, during the Middle Ages, you could run into the cathedral and you would be safe. Nobody would dare arrest you in a cathedral. But if this is a case of murder, you take them away, even from the horns of the altar. And notice, there's nothing in the Bible that says if the person was drunk or under drugs, or diminished capacity, it doesn't matter. No, death penalty is if you commit a capital crime, you get a capital penalty. Simple. If anyone takes the life of a human being, he must be put to death. And by the way, the scripture's clear enough. It's not a matter of age that, if the gangster was under 18, it's okay. No, there's nothing like that. You commit an adult crime, you take an adult penalty. And for you to say, well, I was drunk at the time, well, charge him for being drunk as well. But that's no excuse. If you're going to get violent when you get drunk, don't get drunk. Simple. Whoever kills a man must be put to death. I am the Lord your God. Leviticus 24, 17, 21. This is adamant. This is emphatic. Bloodshed pollutes the land, we read in Numbers 35. Atonement cannot be made for the land on which blood has been shed, except by the blood of the one who shed it. The land comes under a curse when there's innocent bloodshed. And if you wonder why some of our countries are cursed, it's because so many innocent people are murdered. In South Africa, we have about 27,000 people murdered every single year. And the prosecution rate is about 2%. And 2%, that's like the success rate of chemotherapy, 2%. But not even that would be a pass rate in even an ANC government school. God's law remains in force after Calvary. We read that the Apostle Paul even said, I refuse not to be put to death if I've done a crime worthy of death. So the death penalty still applies after Calvary. Our Lord Jesus Christ taught, do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, I've come to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, Jesus said, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law. How much clearer could the Lord make it? God's law remains in force. The government does not bear the sword for nothing. He is God's servant, an agent of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. This is what government exists for. And governors are sent to punish those who do wrong. Anyone who kills with a sword must himself be killed by a sword. What you sow is what you reap. By obeying God's law and by punishing murderers with the death penalty, a nation can cleanse itself from the guilt of innocent blood. And it'll guarantee they won't do it again. Recidivism is 0% for those who are executed. On the other hand, a nation that refuses to avenge the taking of innocent human life must share the guilt of the murderer. Deuteronomy 21 makes it clear, if you don't punish the wicked, then you share the guilt. The opposition of certain human rights groups to the death penalty is selective, as capital punishment is inflicted only on murderers. You're given to wonder why some groups are so concerned for the rights of murderers. What about the rights of the victims? What about the rights of the babies? Doctors who kill babies should also be eligible for the death penalty. It's not right to kill an innocent person. Any civilized society has the moral right and the duty before God to protect itself from those who have no respect for human rights. The taking of a murderer's life is akin to amputation of a diseased limb to save the rest of the body. Now, I can speak with some authority on this because my poor mother had a gangrenous leg. It was a circulation issue from lifelong smoking. My mother was a chain smoker, and she would smoke a pack a day. And the day came when I was called into hospital to authorize the amputation of her leg above the knee. Now, the doctor explained, he had warned my mother, your toe's got to be amputated, it's gangrenous, or the whole foot's going to go. Later, your whole foot's going to have to be amputated. My mother said nothing. When I saw her, she was so grey, she's so ashen-faced. I couldn't even take my children and her grandchildren to see their grandmother because she looked hideously grey when there was no life in her. And the doctor said, you've got to sign for amputation. Now, my mother, being a nurse, was a very bad patient, a very difficult patient, like many nurses. She had a horror for amputation, and she had warned all of her children, don't you dare ever authorize any amputation of me. So I've got a bit of a problem. I contact my brother who's in Joburg, and he says, well, no good mom hating both of us. You're in Cape Town, you sign it. Well, I did authorize it, which is not easy. You don't want to see your mother lose a leg, but if she didn't lose her leg, she'd lose her life. I authorized, and literally a day later, the color had come back to her face. She was recovering. She regained consciousness. That amputation saved her life. Now, she was very angry. She didn't talk to me for a good month or so. She was very angry. But moved into her home. We built a cottage for her. She started attending meals with us and devotions and interacting well. For the sake of her grandchildren, she even started coming to church with us. Although my mother had said, you can't believe in God because of the Second World War. She had seen her neighborhood turn to rubble. She had seen neighbors and friends incinerated by the incendiary bombs. She had endured the 1,000 bomber raids. My mother had been traumatized by the war. But despite all that, she came to faith in Christ when she was in a believing family. And for the sake of her grandchildren, she started coming to church. And then in good time, she came to faith. But I can see if I hadn't authorized that amputation, we would have lost my mom and she wouldn't have gained eternal life. So it was a win-win, ugly as amputation is. But if we want to be soft towards the criminals, we're going to be hard on all the victims. All murder is serious and demands capital punishment. Those who show contempt for the right to life of others forfeit their own right to life. I went once on a delegation to Parliament and I met the Minister of Justice at Parliament down in Cape Town. And this minister that we met said, you find me in a very receptive mood to your demands. We are thinking of introducing a bill for the death penalty for serious murders. I said, excuse me, what murders are serious? They said, like murders of policemen or cabinet ministers. And I said, well, what about the rest of the population? Don't you think it's serious if you murder anybody? And this minister, cabinet minister in the government, was trying to argue that some murders are not that serious. Well, I think it's very serious for the poor person concerned and for their relatives. So this mentality that, it's only serious if it's a government official who's murdered. Capital punishment is necessary for justice. It's necessary for the rule of law. Capital punishment is necessary for the protection of the innocent. Psalm 94, verse 16, who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Who will make a stand for me against the workers of iniquity? And one person who did that was Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated just yesterday on the 10th of September. Yesterday, the influential Christian author and public speaker, 31-year-old Charlie Kirk, was assassinated by a sniper on a university campus in Utah. He is the same age as my second daughter, born 1993, 31 years old, and the father of 2 children, a husband, of course. Now, Charlie Kirk's message was, get back to church, get back to faith, get back to getting married, be straight, have children. That's the type of conservatism I represent. I'm not trying to paint a picture of virtue, and I'm trying to paint a picture of virtue, lifting people up. He said the best thing you can do is be straight, get saved, get married, have lots of children, homeschool them. I mean, that's the kind of conservative he was. Where did he get that from? Summit Ministries. I remember meeting Charlie Kirk first at Summit Ministries. Well, actually, it's not the first time I met him. He reminded me that I'd lectured him at his school. He was a graduate of Christian Liberty High School in Chicago, Arlington Heights, where he grew up. So he went to a fine Christian school. He went to the Summit, where I was a regular lecturer. I was on campus, faculty there. Went there every year lecturing the people who'd come. Most of them were homeschoolers. Well, he came from a Christian school, and he was sent there too because his parents were dedicated Christians. And so under Dr. David Noble, who founded Summit Ministries, he received the biblical worldview that he championed so excellently and so eloquently on the university campuses. And I remember sitting on this porch here, which is extra time, anyone who wants to ask extra questions of the guest lecturers. And I'd sit on this porch, and Charlie asked the most probing questions. He was just 18 years old, and yet you could tell already this guy's got a really sharp mind from the questions he's asking. And he became Exhibit A of Summit Ministries. In fact, he came back to even be a lecturer at the Summit often, because Charlie Kirk really got the message we were giving, the culture war, the biblical worldview. He understood the issues, and he fought the issues. He was a pro-life, pro-family, moral opponent of the LGBTQ, CRT, woke insanity of the world. And so Charlie Kirk became excellent on TV, on social media. He started the Turning Point work. I mean, imagine, I think he had something ridiculous like 5 million followers on social media. Donald Trump attributed him for bringing in the Generation Z votes. And do you know, Donald Trump called on Charlie Kirk to come to his office to help select who would be on his cabinet. That's how much he trusted him. Now, he published a book, The College Scam, How American Universities Are Bankrupting and Brainwashing Away the Future of American Youth. Most young people are in their 40s or even 50s before they've paid off their college debt. And what good was that degree anyway? If they'd gone into some proper skill like carpentry or plumbing, if they'd been an apprentice, an electrician and so on, they would be earning vast amounts, and then their friends who went to college are still paying massive amounts of debt. And for what? For gender studies and brainwashing on CRT? Is that really worthwhile anything? So he wrote The College Scam. He also wrote Time for a Turning Point, and he launched the organization Turning Point. And he set the course for limited government and free markets for future generations. And Turning Point became so huge, so big. It was a major factor in getting Donald Trump elected the first time, 2016, and re-elected. He also wrote The Mega Doctrine, The Only Ideas That Will Win the Future. So Charlie Kirk was a major influencer when it came to the MAGA movement. He also wrote The Forward for Winning the Social Media War, and he certainly knew how to win the social media war. He was very active in social media, a best-selling author, and someone with millions of followers. Apparently, in the last 10 years, something ridiculous like 3 billion downloads of his materials have been done on the media. So his social media posts have been viewed, shared, reacted to in the billions of times. And that's one of his famous quotes is, "Just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right." Yep. Truth is truth, even if no one believes it. A lie is a lie, even if everyone believes it. Mm-hmm. Truth is the new hate speech, have you noticed? Mm-hmm. Hate speech is just free speech that liberals don't like. And as Charlie Kirk said often, they can't argue with you. They can't debate you. They can't even converse with you. All they can do is resort to violence. And you can see the whole way on the college campuses, it's all now about my feelings. I'm offended. And so you'd go into these university campuses and people called him a provocateur. He was not a provocateur. He was just trying to have a rational discussion. Prove me wrong. And he'd make his statements and then he'd wait for them to try and prove him wrong, which they never did. All they could do is rant and rave, and that's offensive. You're a Nazi bigot. Well, what does that prove? In fact, there was some idiot in Britain who who on the Good Morning show in Britain phoned in and said that this is like the death of a leader of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, just because the man believes in rationality and non-racialism and treats all men equally and love your neighbor, that makes him a Ku Klux Klan, Nazi, bigot, racist. And terrible. As Aristotle warned us 2,400 years ago, tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying society. Everything goes, except Christianity, basically. And then the last virtue they've got left is just tolerance of evil, apathy in the face of evil. Tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying society. And so Antifa just epitomized this. These bunch of insane communist terrorists who would just burn, loot, murder all over the society, and thugs funded by George Soros to throw rocks and stone cars and burn vehicles and buildings. In university campuses, Charlie Kirk was like the point of the spear when it came to the culture war. He'd go into the campuses and he'd make statements like this: only in America could a president achieve the lowest ever black and Hispanic unemployment, have black businesses start up skyrocket 400%, see wages go for black workers, advocate for prison reform, pardon wrongfully convicted people of color, and still be called a racist. I mean, it's insane. Donald Trump did more for black people in America than any president in the history of America has ever done, and then he's the one who gets accused of being a racist, as opposed to the low-life scumbag Bidens and Obamas who impoverished the people's lives. If you're going to college to find yourself, you're going to lose yourself at college. The amount of young people I've come across, I had to find myself. You were lost? The Constitution was not written for the times, it was written to stand the test of time. So he's a constitutionalist, he was pro-life, and one of his comments was, nothing is free. We all know that. You think education is expensive now? Just wait until it's free. And it's true, nothing is free. When the government gives you something free, they use your taxes to pay for it. So you end up paying a lot more for free education than you ever would if it was just paid for by the students themselves. And I know that that's true. So for example, when I went to theological college, I was too male and too pale to get a bursary. And so I had to work, and so I had a 6-day-a-week job at the fire brigade, 8 hours a night, and that put me through college. But when I finished college and I got my graduation, I walked out debt-free. I owed nothing. And that's such a relief. My poor wife, after her college degree, and she had to work waitressing and all that sort of thing to get herself through, and she did, on holidays, she would coach and ice skating and skiing, but she had college debt when I first met her. She had to sell her car and a bunch of other things in order to get debt-free so she could come to Mission Field and join Frontline in Cape Town. College debt is a ball and chain around many, many young people's minds. And state education is extremely expensive. So Charlie Kirk made these statements back when Biden was president. It wasn't enough for the left to burn our flag. It wasn't enough for the left to burn our businesses. It wasn't enough for the left to burn our churches. They're now burning our Bible. And Joe Biden has stayed silent through it all. And that's true, that's a progression. You tolerate them burning your flag, they'll get around to burning your businesses and your churches and your Bible in the end. This is the sort of thing Charlie Kirk was doing yesterday when he got shot, handing out signed MAGA hats, and he's got this tent there, his gazebo would be "Prove Me Wrong," and anyone could ask any questions, and you can see some of these very interesting interactions, people getting so worked up, totally immune to logic. Imbeciles, some of the most brainless people on the planet, standing up saying, "You're a college dropout, what have you achieved? You know, what right do you have? Everybody here knows more than you." So the man asks a whole bunch of very straightforward questions like, who's Ludwig von Mises, and so on. And this is meant to be an economics major, and he doesn't know who these people are. And he mentions some of the most important names in economics. No, he doesn't know who they are. But he calls Charlie Kirk a university dropout fool. And Charlie Kirk didn't bother to waste his time on the college campus, but he's a well-read, self-educated man. And so he doesn't, and notice he's wearing freedom on his T-shirt. I think that was the message he had on when he was shot yesterday. So Charlie Kirk was a powerhouse on radio, and he was friends with some of the most powerful people around. Many believe that Charlie Kirk was presidential material. He would have been, in about 12 years or so from now, maybe a presidential candidate for the Republican Party. Donald Trump even called for him to help him choose his cabinet positions. And he's a friend with the Maha health leader, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as well. So this was a political assassination of a man who is not only super powerful and influential in the Republican Party and the MAGA movement, but someone who has been a major culture warrior. And so, as some have said, this is a political assassination, but he's also a religious martyr. He was killed because he's a pro-life, pro-family person who stands for Christian principles. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Or it could make you a target for assassination. Notice some of the people who stood up to the Democrat left were shot in the past. And that includes John F. Kennedy, who was a Republican, and his brother Robert Kennedy, who was also assassinated. But they were against the liberal agenda, and for that reason they got targeted. Of course, Ronald Reagan was shot in his first few months in office, although by God's grace he survived, but only by a few millimeters. It was so close to his heart. And of course, when it comes to Donald Trump, it was not even inches, it was millimeters. He just moved his head at the exact moment the shooter fired, and he got his ear instead of the middle of his skull. But America's got a history of assassinating leaders. And Charlie Kirk is one of the latest. And what do the liberals hate? Straight man, straight woman, traditional wife with children. I mean, this is the most counter-revolutionary thing you can do. Be straight, get married, have lots of children. They hate this. Happy family. Family is the basic building block of society. And as goes the family, so goes the nation. So now this poor Iryna is a widow, and their two lovely children, a son and a daughter, 4-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old son, are orphaned. And terrible. President Trump has ordered all American flags lowered to half-mast throughout the country until Sunday. And even at the Yankee Stadium, which I wouldn't have thought they would care, but it's not even that he's a New Yorker either. They all prayed. The books that inspired Charlie Kirk would include David Noble's The Battle for the Truth, and under the same times, these were his handbooks for the culture wars. We summarized a lot of these messages in our Biblical Principles for Africa book, which is a lot thinner, but it has the basic biblical economics, biblical worldview. He understood the biblical worldview from Understanding Times of David Noble, and that's what inspired and guided the phenomenal work of Charlie Kirk. So we can only hope that they haven't silenced Charlie Kirk, but just by drawing attention to him, hopefully it will multiply the impact of his message and his movement even greater. May others take up the challenge, take up the flag and take it further.